We'll go on the record in People versus Justin Consdorf. This is file number 265148. The record should reflect that Mr. Consdorf is present here in the courtroom today. If I could have counsel for the attorneys.
Ryan Ziegler.
Thomas Seeger appearing with on behalf of Mr. Consdorf here.
All right, this is the date set for sentencing in this matter. Mr. Consdorf, did you have a chance to go through the pre-sentence report and talk to Mr. Seeger about that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Seeger, just for the record, I did have a chance to look at the letters that you submitted. One was from Mr. Consdorf's grandmother, and the other is from Kalkaska Memorial Health Center. I did have a chance to read those for a few minutes we were waiting. Do you have any other additions, deletions, or corrections?
I do not.
And do you have any challenges to the scoring of the guidelines?
I do not.
Mr. Ziegler, do the people have any additions, deletions, or corrections?
No, Your Honor.
Any challenges to the scoring?
No, Your Honor.
Do you have any victims that wish to address the court today?
Yes, Your Honor. The minor victim would like to address the court.
Mr. Consdorf, you have to take a seat over there. All right. State your name for the record, please.
Mackenzie Schmidt.
What is it that you would like to say here today?
Your Honor, the incident between Justin and I affected my sense of safety, trust, and emotional well-being. I struggled to process what happened, and I struggled to feel safe. I want to be clear that his actions were not okay. I understand that he is dealing with personal and mental health struggles, but that does not excuse the impact this incident has had on me. I thought he was going to kill me, and I'm lucky that I got help when I did. Through this process, I have not felt he feels remorse for his actions. Every time I look at him, I see anger. That worries me. I am concerned that when he gets out, he will try to take that anger out on me. That fear has added to the emotional toll that this has taken on me. I do not wish suffering upon him, but I respectfully ask that it is required that he has to complete some form of batterers intervention classes or anger management courses before he is allowed back in with the public. I believe these steps are necessary to promote real change and ensure safety moving forward. I am not just here speaking for me, but also for the next person he gets into a relationship with. I don't want to see another woman become the victim of abuse. My hope is this leads to growth and rehabilitation, but most importantly, I want to feel safe. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Consdorf, you can come back up to the podium, please. Mr. Ziegler, anything by way of
Your Honor, I would support the recommendation in this case. This is a deeply troubling case with the defendant, upon being refused sex, choked his girlfriend, broke her, and made threats to, quote, put her in the ground. The sounds of the victim being choked and threatened by the defendant were recorded by the victim, and I have listened to that recording more than once. It's very troubling, and whatever the defendant would say about what he did or why he did it or why he said certain things at that time, he must understand that his behavior is not just inappropriate, but abhorrent. I've spoken to the victim in this matter, and the court's heard from her today. She's very intelligent and articulate for a woman of 17 or 18 years of age. She's been very understanding of the defendant's circumstances. She believes the defendant needs help, he needs counseling, but he also needs accountability for his actions. I think this plea agreement and the recommended sentence does a good job of balancing the need for punishment and deterrence with the fact that Mr. Consdorf still is going to have a future ahead of him, and hopefully we'll be able to learn from this incident. I think the recommendation of upfront jail, given its guidelines, is appropriate, it makes sense. I think a lengthy term of probation in this case also makes sense. He will avoid the sex offender registry, and if the court adopts the recommendation, would avoid prison, but he would still face significant consequences. He would still be monitored for an appreciable time. He would still have to complete all the goals of his probation. I sincerely hope that Mr. Consdorf realizes how serious this situation was and is, and how much worse this could have gone for him. I'm hopeful that this is a turning point. I'm hopeful he gets the help he needs. I'm glad to have read the letter from his counselor that he's been in counseling. Clearly, that has not had all of the desired effects as of yet. Clearly, he still has some issues he needs to work through. I'm hopeful that he gets the help he needs and this does not become a problem. I would ask the court to adopt the recommendations.
Thank you. Mr. Seeger?
I would agree with Mr. Ziegler in as much as like I would commend the complaining witness, at least in terms of the way that she articulated her position. And I think that hopefully Mr. Consdorf was able to appreciate that what he has done has created a large amount of fear for the complaining witness, and that is something that is fully understandable. And I hope that he is remorseful for what he's done. He's expressed a great deal of remorse for his actions, and he recognizes that what he did was wrongful. And hopefully going forward, because he does not have a long, extensive criminal history, this is a situation that he can. But the facts and circumstances of themselves are not favorable. I do agree with Mr. Ziegler that they're not, his conduct is not exemplary in any way. And what he did on that particular day was a very dangerous act, and it could have, much like in another sense, and it could have gone a very much different way. But because he's a young person, Your Honor, I'm hopeful that he can change his ways as opposed to somebody who arguably has 5 similar like entries on their record. This is not the same situation for Mr. Consdorf, albeit it is elevated in terms of what its ultimate sentence will be for. But he does have mental health problems, Your Honor. He has sought out counseling. Those are all things that are working in his favor. When I had spoken to the prosecuting attorney earlier in this file, he was amendable to, after speaking with the complaining witness, not to put him in a position where arguably he would have been required to register as a sex offender. So that is a benefit to Mr. Consdorf. That is a compliment to the complaining witness, at least in terms of recognizing that, you know, there are some mitigating circumstances that will allow him to be rehabilitated. And perhaps this circumstance, unlike others, is more focused towards rehabilitation as opposed to being punitive solely. And there will be a jail sentence, Your Honor, absent the court departing downward, which I'm not asking the court to do. But the guidelines contemplate for a sentence of 10 to 23 months. So theoretically, the court could sentence him to prison. And there is going to be a minimum of at least 10 months incarceration, for which that sentence is endorsed by the probation department, who has had an opportunity to review facts and circumstances of the case and is making a recommendation of county time jail, followed by probation. The only thing that I can ask the court to do, aside from following the recommendation generally, is to allow him to have the benefit of HIDA. I know that at the time of the plea, the court was somewhat hesitant based on the charges itself. It's now had the opportunity to review the PSI, so perhaps it's in a better position to determine whether or not that would be an appropriate remedy. When I had spoken to the prosecuting attorney, he was not necessarily inclined to endorse it, but he was not in opposition of it per se. He was simply going to defer to the court, and unless his position is changed, I would just ask the court to consider whether or not it would give him the benefit of HIDA, given that he is a young person, given that he does not have a long, extensive criminal history, given that he does have mental health concerns, and given that he has engaged in counseling. I don't know, Your Honor, if going forward he will reform his conduct, much the same as I can't say that about anyone. But I would like to think that the young people can change, and that they should be given opportunities that perhaps we would not give or extend to people who are more learned or have had a lot more experience in the world. And maybe, Your Honor, and I'm not exclusively saying that this is the case, but perhaps if he didn't have mental health problems, he handles situations differently. I'm not a doctor, Your Honor. I can only say in review of the letter from Kilkaskin Memorial Health, it appears as though he's at least engaging in counseling, and I would agree with Mr. Ziegler that its desired effect has not yet been attained, but there are probably a lot of people, especially Mr. Consdorf, who need to focus on their own counseling to better their understanding of how they need to conform their actions to allow them to operate generally in society, how to work through relationships, how to resolve problems without some form of violence. to walk away when there's a disagreement, to just simply say nothing when another party is upset with you, or whatever the facts may be. And I put no blame on the complaining witness in this case whatsoever, Your Honor, and neither does Mr. Constor, clearly being sentenced for the things that he's done. But again, Your Honor, because he's a young person, I'm only asking the court to consider it. Whether or not the court does it is clearly up to the court. But I think that in terms of giving him an opportunity to be successful on his probation, historically, HIDA is a statute that was created by our legislature to give people of his age and pedigree an opportunity to reform their conduct. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't successfully complete the probation, even when given the benefit of HIDA, but or 7411 or similar like programming. But I think that that would be a good reason for him to continue working towards successfully completing his probation. And I don't disagree with the complaining witness that as a component of his probation, if it's not a condition of his probation currently, that he would probably benefit from some kind of anger management type counseling, if it's not encapsulated in the counseling that he's currently doing in Kilkaskia. So to that end, Your Honor, the court has reviewed the letter from Kilkaskia Memorial, and the court has reviewed the letter from his grandmother. He has had somewhat of a difficult childhood that is not a insulator to his liability or responsibility to this court and the complaining witness for the acts that he's done. But it is perhaps an explanation as to why he did what he did. And so now it's just a question of what the court will do ultimately in terms of the sentence and whether or not the court can give him the opportunity to be placed on HIDA. But to that end, Your Honor, is just asking for that opportunity, but he understands that there are consequences to his decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Constorf, anything you wanted to say today?
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I miss you more and more every day. I feel terrible for what I did. I just want to go home.
All right, Mr. Consdorf, I did read through the report, so I'm familiar with what happened in this case. There's a lot of information in that report about the details of this incident, including a recitation of the recording that was made. I didn't get to chance to actually listen to the recording, but it was pretty well reflected in the written portion of the PSI. There's also a lot of information in there about you and your circumstances generally. And so I take all of that into account along with what the lawyers had to say. And I appreciate your comments here in court. I could tell that you were nervous. It's a really difficult thing to do, to talk in public about a terrible thing that's happened to you. And I always tell victims this who are able to make statements. I think it's really important for two reasons. Number one, for you personally, sometimes expressing those things out loud and in public can be helpful to you in your recovery and moving on from this. And I think it's a good example for other victims to see somebody have the courage to come up and talk about what happened to them in public, because it is such a difficult thing to do. And I think it's important for victims to do that because it gives me a much different look into the case when I actually see and hear from the person who it affected as opposed to just reading about it. So I appreciate your comments here in court today. Mr. Consdorf, I think there's some competing factors here. Certainly your conduct in this case is completely unacceptable and not something that as a society we're willing to tolerate and are going to tolerate. And I think there's a punishment that you have to face for that so that you understand that and to provide hopefully a deterrent effect for you going forward. That being said, I think Mr. Seeger also pointed out some of the mitigating factors here, your age. Sometimes people do things that they don't fully understand the consequences of, or they lack a degree of self-control based on a lack of maturity that hopefully through time and things like counseling you can get. And so I think those are valid points here as well. And I think, as I think both sides have indicated, the sentence here provides for kind of both of those things. And so I do think it's an adequate recommendation, and I am going to follow that. I think, you know, to the extent that you don't follow through with probation, the court can always order prison time later. If it doesn't look like you're going down that road of getting help and working on the issues that led you to do this, you're going to be on probation for a lengthy period of time. So that gives us some assurance that you're going to be monitored for a period of time. And if, again, if things go wrong, I have a way to take you out of the community if that's needed. But I think we all recognize that we are hoping that this doesn't go that way, that you do follow through with probation, that you successfully complete it, and that you're able to move on from this, just as that's my hope for the victim in this case. I don't think HIDA is an appropriate measure in this case, given the nature of the crime. I think it's important that this remain on the public record, because to the extent that you don't reform and don't get help, I think it's going to be important for people in the future to know that this has happened and have access to that through records. So I don't think HIDA is an appropriate measure again. Other than that, the court is going to generally adopt the recommendation. I am going to impose a slightly longer term of jail because I think it's warranted by your conduct in this case. But the court is going to place you on probation for a period of 36 months. The court is going to adopt as the conditions of your probation all the terms and conditions listed in this report. And I am going to include, or maybe I missed it, but I didn't see it in here. Oh, no, it is in here. Okay, paragraph 10. And I know you made the statement that you miss her, but you need to understand that you're not to have any contact with her, either directly or through another person, whether that's while you're in jail or after you're released on probation. And that's paragraph 10. You must not have verbal, written, electronic, or physical contact with the victim, either directly or through another person, or be within 500 feet of her residence, school, or place of employment. Otherwise, the court's adopting all the other conditions of probation that were recommended. The court is going to order that you serve 12 months in the Kalkaska County Jail with credit for 73 days served, a crime victim's assessment of $130, court costs of $325, attorney fees of $350, a DNA testing fee of $60, $68 state cost, and a $30 per month supervision fee while you're on probation. You do have the ability to seek an appeal of the sentence, and that's where it's analysis. Okay.
For the record, returning a copy.
Did you want those letters attached to the PSI?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Conscript, you are admitted to the custody of the county at this time. That concludes the docket. The court will be in recess until 1:30.